Chung Myung searched the entire back mountain for hours, but he still couldn't find the hidden storage. Still, he refused to give up. Finally, he sat down and began channeling his chi into the ground itself. If there was a large hollow space underground, the energy would react differently. Again and again he tested the earth beneath him. Again and again he failed. But on the final attempt, he felt something. The energy bounced back. His eyes widened. There. Without hesitation, he started digging. After some time, his fingers finally struck something solid. Bricks. A grin slowly spread across his face. This really is Mount Hua's secret vault. Excited, he removed one of the bricks and peered inside. A dark underground passage stretched ahead of him. At the end of it, the hidden storage room of the Mount Hua Sect. The account books, treasures, and records that could save the sect had to be inside. But just as he prepared to enter, footsteps approached. Chung Myung quickly hid himself. The person who arrived was none other than the sect leader. The old man quietly walked toward the massive metal gate. Then he simply stood there. His trembling hand gently touched the cold surface, but he made no attempt to open it. Watching silently from the shadows, Chung Myung understood immediately. That was not the posture of a man trying to open a door. It was the posture of a man who could do nothing. The Mount Hua Sect was collapsing. Its martial arts were declining. Its wealth had disappeared. And the sect leader could only watch helplessly as the sect he dedicated his entire life to slowly fell apart. Yet he couldn't show that despair to anyone, because a sect leader was supposed to be someone others could rely on. So he endured the pain alone. After a long silence, the sect leader quietly turned around and left. At daybreak, Chung Myung returned to the underground vault. "It's not too late yet," he muttered. "I'll change Mount Hua's fate myself." He placed his hand against the gate and sent his chi into it, only for the energy to rebound violently. His eyes narrowed. The door was made of everlasting metal, the strongest metal in existence, said to be more valuable than gold itself. And it was nearly a foot thick. Even the greatest masters in the world would struggle to cut through it. No wonder the sect leader hadn't even tried. But then Chung Myung noticed something carved into the surface. Sword marks. Not random marks. The traces of the 24 Plum Blossom Sword technique. Someone had left behind the key. If he could perfectly recreate the sword forms, the gate would open. But there was one problem. His current body was far too weak to perform the technique properly. Even reproducing a single movement would consume all of his chi. Still, he had no choice. Then he made a dangerous decision. He would use innate true chi, the life force every human is born with, the energy that sustained life itself. Using it recklessly could destroy his body permanently. But Chung Myung didn't hesitate. He drew his sword. The moment he activated the technique, blood spilled from his mouth. His body screamed in pain. Still, he moved. One stance, another, then another. His sword danced through the darkness like blooming plum blossoms. His muscles tore. Blood flowed endlessly from his lips. But he continued, because he was the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, and he could not fail here. Finally, the blade marks on the wall began to glow. Rumble. The massive gate slowly opened. At the same time, Chung Myung collapsed to one knee and coughed up even more blood. His body had reached its limit. At minimum, he would need months to recover. But none of that mattered. Saving the Mount Hua Sect came first. Breathing heavily, Chung Myung slowly stood back up and stared into the darkness beyond the gate. Then he laughed quietly. He was suddenly curious. Just what exactly had his great senior brother hidden inside this vault 100 years ago? With anticipation in his eyes, Chung Myung stepped into the secret storage room. After opening the secret vault, Chung Myung found that it was smaller than he had expected. 3 bookshelves stood inside the room. His eyes immediately landed on the account books he had been searching for. A smile spread across his face. His great senior brother had copied the original records from Mount Hua's Finance and Economy Agency and preserved them here. The merchants who had stolen Mount Hua's businesses were finished if these records were genuine. After gathering the account books, Chung Myung searched for anything else of value. To his surprise, the shelves contained numerous martial arts manuals, many of the techniques that later generations had discarded. His senior brother had been unable to throw them away. Even if he had decided not to pass them down, he could not bear to lose them forever. So he had hidden them here, hoping they might one day help Mount Hua again. Looking at the shelves, Chung Myung felt a lump form in his throat. The first shelf represented the duty of a sect leader. The second represented his senior brother's love and attachment to the sect. Quietly, Chung Myung vowed that he would restore the Mount Hua Sect to glory and make it stronger than it had ever been. Then he noticed a lone scroll on the third shelf. It contained a letter from the 21st sect leader. The letter explained that a sect leader's role was not merely to lead Mount Hua, but to protect and nurture its disciples so they could pursue their dreams. Mount Hua would always remain Mount Hua, whether in prosperity or decline. The duty of each generation was simply to preserve its spirit and pass it on to the next. Moved by the words, Chung Myung carefully stored the scroll away. As he prepared to leave, something felt wrong. His senior brother had always been obsessed with symmetry. There was no way he would leave an entire shelf almost empty. Curious, Chung Myung examined it more closely and discovered a hidden compartment behind the shelf. Inside was another secret chamber. The room was filled with gold bars, rare weapons, precious gems, secret manuals, and priceless treasures arranged in perfect order. For a moment, Chung Myung simply stared. Then he burst out laughing. He was rich. Later that evening, the current sect leader sat alone, burdened by the thought that only 5 days remained before the debt collectors returned. Suddenly, Unam rushed in. "Sect leader, you need to see this immediately." The two hurried across the sect grounds. Along the way, they passed exhausted disciples sprawled across the training field after another one of Chung Myung's brutal training sessions. When they arrived, Chung Myung stood waiting. His face was pale, and he looked as though he might collapse at any moment. "Please look at this," he said. Before them lay piles of gold, weapons, manuals, and documents. The sect leader was stunned. While examining the treasures, he discovered the account books of Mount Hua's businesses in Huayin Prefecture. Alongside them were official government documents proving ownership. Then his eyes landed on something else. The 7 Plum Blossom technical records. The sect leader's eyes rolled back. He immediately fainted. When he finally woke up, he shouted for the Finance and Economy Agency elder. After carefully inspecting everything, the elder confirmed the unbelievable truth. The records are genuine. The ownership documents are authentic. We can reclaim the businesses that originally belonged to Mount Hua. He paused before adding, and the value of the recovered assets exceeds 100,000 niang. Relief washed over the sect leader. For the first time in years, hope returned to his face. He thought of the young disciple who had somehow brought all of this to light. That child. A smile appeared on his face. He is truly Mount Hua's harbinger of fortune. The sect leader immediately stood up. If the records were real, then it was time to confront the merchants. Without hesitation, he ordered all personnel connected to Mount Hua's business affairs to gather at once. The time had come to reclaim what belonged to Mount Hua. A few days later, the merchants once again climbed Mount Hua. The journey up the mountain left many of them exhausted. "Why would the sect leader summon us before the deadline?" one merchant asked. Pavilion owner Gong chuckled confidently. "Do you really think he managed to gather 100,000 niang in such a short time? He's probably calling us here to beg for mercy." Most of the merchants agreed. There was simply no way a dying sect could raise such a massive amount of money. However, one merchant remained uneasy. He was the same merchant who had been beaten by Chung Myung days earlier. For some reason, he felt that something was wrong. Soon, the group arrived at the main hall, where the sect leader welcomed them calmly. After exchanging greetings, pavilion owner Gong immediately cut to the point. "Let's skip the formalities and discuss the debt." The sect leader nodded. "I searched everywhere for assistance, but unfortunately, I was unable to secure enough funds. Therefore, Mount Hua cannot repay the full amount at this time." A smile immediately appeared on Gong's face. "Then I assume you understand our position. We cannot grant any further extensions." The sect leader lowered his head slightly. "That is why I called everyone here today. We cannot repay the entire debt, but we can repay a portion of it. Therefore, I ask if any among you would be willing to personally delay repayment and show mercy to Mount Hua." The merchants exchanged confused glances. Even Chung Myung, who was secretly watching from afar, narrowed his eyes. Was the sect leader truly begging for help? Or was he setting a trap? The more Chung Myung observed him, the more he realized that Hyunjong was far wiser than he appeared. The sect leader continued. "To each of you, this debt represents a large sum of money. I understand that, but I ask you one question." He looked around the room. "What does Mount Hua mean to you?" The hall fell silent. For generations, Mount Hua has protected Huayin Prefecture. Even in decline, we have remained here. Does our history hold no value? Does our name mean nothing? His calm voice echoed throughout the hall. Pavilion owner Gong laughed dismissively. "If anyone wishes to delay repayment, stand over there." He pointed to one side of the room. Those who want their money immediately can remain here with me. Choose for yourselves. The merchants hesitated. Many of them had grown up hearing stories about Mount Hua. Yet 100,000 niang was a fortune. For a long moment nobody moved. Gong smirked. See? Nobody. Suddenly, a merchant stepped forward. It was shop owner Yu. Gong frowned. What are you doing? You took a deep breath. You aren't from Huayin Prefecture, so you don't understand. He looked toward the sect leader. My father grew up hearing stories about Mount Hua. My grandfather did too. Every child in this province dreams of becoming a disciple of Mount Hua. He shook his head. Yes, I could take the money and live comfortably. But if my decision causes Mount Hua to disappear, I would regret it for the rest of my life. The hall became silent. One by one, more merchants stepped away from Gong and joined you. The atmosphere changed instantly. The sect leader smiled faintly. It is enough for me to know that there are still people who remember what Mount Hua has done for this province. Then he looked toward Unam. Bring it. A large stack of documents was carried into the hall. The moment pavilion owner Gong saw them, his face turned pale. The sect leader calmly opened the records. The business account books of Mount Hua. The room erupted into confusion. Impossible! Gong's expression froze. The sect leader's eyes hardened. For generations, Mount Hua entrusted many businesses to local families for management. He raised the records for everyone to see. But instead of honoring that trust, some chose to seize those businesses for themselves. The official ownership documents, government certifications, and financial records were all present. There was no room for argument. The sect leader's voice rang through the hall. According to these records, the businesses currently under your control belong to Mount Hua. He looked directly at pavilion owner Gong. As of today, Mount Hua will reclaim every business, every asset, and every coin that rightfully belongs to the sect. The color drained from Gong's face. The trap had finally closed. The merchants who had supported Mount Hua were allowed to continue running their businesses and keep their profits. The ones who had betrayed the sect, however, left the mountain looking as though their souls had been ripped out. Even then, Kong refused to accept defeat. The records are fake, he shouted while descending the mountain. They bribed the officials. We'll appeal to higher authorities. The other merchants looked at him as if he had lost his mind. Then suddenly, a familiar figure dressed in ridiculous black burglar clothes appeared in the road. It was Chung Myung. Again, the merchants stared. One of them couldn't help thinking, does this kid realize he's dressed exactly like a thief? Chung Myung ignored them. I've come to recover my wealth. Kong sneered and summoned his guards. Moments later, every guard was rolling on the ground in agony. Kong's face twitched. There was an awkward silence. Then Chung Myung cracked his knuckles and smiled. You should have listened the first time. Looking at the pile of unconscious bodyguards, Kong finally realized something terrifying. Mount Hua wasn't dead yet, and unfortunately for him, his biggest problem had just woken up. The pavilion owner Kong unleashed his blazing palm technique, pouring all his strength into a relentless barrage of attacks. Yet no matter how hard he tried, Chung Myung effortlessly avoided every strike. Kong's frustration grew with every passing second. Whenever he gathered chi into his arms, Chung Myung interrupted the movement before the attack could fully form. The accumulated energy rebounded through Kong's body, leaving him in increasing pain. Desperate, Kong switched tactics and launched himself forward with enhanced footwork. Once again, Chung Myung vanished from his path and appeared behind him. Tap. The sheathed sword struck Kong's shoulder. Kong gritted his teeth. The young man wasn't particularly fast. He wasn't overwhelmingly strong either. Yet every movement was perfect. Perfect timing, perfect distance, perfect direction. It was as though he could read every thought before it happened. A monster. That was the only conclusion Kong could reach. Meanwhile, Chung Myung sighed. I don't think I can keep playing around much longer. I'm running out of stamina. Kong stared at him. If you're this strong, why haven't you helped Mount Hua all this time? Chung Myung casually swung his sheathed sword. Why would I answer someone like you? Then he narrowed his eyes. Actually, I should be asking the questions. Your martial arts are far too refined for a simple innkeeper. A man with your skills could make money 100 different ways. Kong shrugged. Is there a law saying martial artists can't run ins? No. Chung Myung grinned. But people like you always say the same thing. No secrets. No schemes. No one giving orders. just living an honest life. Kong remained silent. See? I already knew your answer. Chung Myung's grin widened. Which brings me to my favorite method. Kong felt a chill run down his spine. When someone refuses to tell me what I want to know, I stop asking questions. He rolled his shoulders. I just beat the hell out of them until I feel better. The next moment, Chung Myung moved. Crack. His sword struck Kong's shoulder. Before Kong could react, crack. His neck. Crack. His ribs. Every blow landed exactly where he least expected. Kong couldn't dodge a single attack. Worse, when he looked into Chung Myung's eyes, he saw something terrifying. Those weren't the eyes of a young disciple. They were the eyes of someone who had walked through countless battlefields and survived them all. Someone who had killed. A lot. For the first time, genuine fear gripped Kong. Then Chung Myung slowly drew his sword. The playful expression disappeared. Now he was serious. Kong's heart nearly stopped. At the last possible moment, he desperately executed a defensive palm art, diverting the incoming strike. The familiar movement caught Chung Myung's attention immediately. His sword stopped. Silence filled the road. Then Chung Myung's eyes narrowed. A slow smile appeared on his face. You! His voice turned cold. You're from the Southern Edge sect, aren't you?